All right, my friends, well, welcome to another edition of our Solopreneur Movement podcast. My name is Bruce Sloan. I'm the founder of the Solopreneur Movement, and this is a spend time with talent edition specific to the mortgage industry. So for those of you who this is your first time listening to our podcast, a solopreneur is any individual person who is solely in charge of their business growth. I always say a business should be easy on paper. However, your business is not easy when it comes to your sales and your service and your operations and your marketing and the mindset and all the different things that goes into running a business as a solopreneur. So with all that being said, I have a special guest for us today, Christine Beckwith of 2020 Vision for Success Coaching. And I had the pleasure and the honor of meeting Christine almost 2 years ago exactly. Christine flew out to Denver and we hosted a Mile High Millions in real estate event. And Christine was the only outside person outside of Colorado that flew in on her own dime, quite candidly, and said, I got to be there. I got to come to this event. And so thank you so much to our friends at Andy Mack, specifically Jeff Zinsmeister and Michael Shearer, right? And all those friends. So now 2 years later, and Christine, it doesn't feel like 2 years, but now 2 years later, it's been amazing how, you know, we continue to grow together. I know that we're only scratching the surface on the things that we could be doing together. And I had the pleasure of going out and actually being the MC for your event in Tampa Bay a couple months ago. I think it was a couple months ago. It might only been like a month ago, but you know how
in mortgage years, it's been like 2 years.
That's exactly right. So, you know, I just, what I like to do is instead of me bragging on you, I just want to give you, 3 to 5 minutes to give a humble brag on yourself and how you've gotten to this point in this stage of your career.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and hello, everyone. I'm always happy to share some wisdom and nuggets. And, I'll start by, we're going to do a big group hug here because I'll start by saying, Bruce came onto my radar, as we mentioned, through mutual acquaintances. And at the time, a colleague of mine, Jeff Zinsmeister, he knew Bruce was holding the Mile High Symposium and called and said, would you like to be a speaker? And I was like, absolutely. First of all, I love the Denver market. I had a branch. I should say I had a district there with 8 teams of 8 loan officers for many, many years. So I know a lot of lovely people in that market area. And anyways, you held a great event. I was really proud to be part of it. And the rest is history. We've been kind of, zigzagging through this industry. We have similar mantras and love for and passion for helping other people and coaching and stuff. So how did I get here? Nobody has time for that. Let me tell you. I'll in 1 minute or less. I'm a 30-year mortgage industry veteran. I came up through the ranks of sales. I proved myself as an originator for, a long time. I kept my origination licenses as a manager. Continued to compete at high levels and with great results, and then eventually won some executive level spots. I held those positions the last, 17 years. Only been at 2 companies the last 24 years, 12 and 12. So wonderful, rare longevity within 2 firms. And the whole time last decade, there was a break in between those 2 jobs. The earlier job ended during the mortgage implosion, with me being the shot caller to close down pretty much, an operation with hundreds and hundreds of people. Very difficult thing to do after you've built a business for 12 years. So I took like 3 or 4 months off. I went to work finding another job, got a job, then took 3 or 4 months off. I wrote my book, Wise Eyes, that's now been published since March of 2018. And so the last decade, even though I've been working in the field, I really kind of always knew that I was going to build a coaching company. When I wrote the book that summer, I kind of fell on to my why. And I think sometimes breaks in your life that are unexpected, like the closure of a job, makes you stop and look hard at your life sometimes unexpectedly. And, I thought I was going to retire at this company, and there I was suddenly jobless. Like everybody else. And it caused me to pause and look at things and myself and what I, had sacrificed the prior 12 years for this company, and how much I poured myself still to this day into my work, which, I probably need medicine for. But the truth is, I'm a workaholic, and I've just always been, kind of hyper, calm hyper. Like I'm not running around like a spaz, but I'm highly active. So the long and the short of it is that I knew I'd build a coaching company, said to the next gig, which was Annie Mac Home Mortgage, that I thought I'd be there 3 to 5 years. It ended up being 12. And around the 10-year mark, I began to talk about offboarding. And it was a concerted effort to kind of do that process. And, they're still wonderfully in my fold because I consult for them. And so I have the pleasure every single month of working with their loan officers and watching many of their loan officers using my virtual training system. So, but today I am the president of 2020 Vision for Success Coaching. I've written 3 books, which I'm really proud of, and one just launched last week. And that's it. I write. I'm a columnist in a lot of the national mortgage industry magazines. I get a lot from writing and sharing. And I guess you would say I'm living in my entrepreneurial dream now. So, we're about 2 years in, officially 12 months in. I mean, we began to build 12 months before leaving Annie Mac. But officially we're 1 year. We just celebrated our 1 year on November 1st. So, yeah.
So we got a lot of anniversaries too, because it's your birthday today as well, right? So we're going to date this podcast a little bit. So happy birthday. I'm not going to sing to you though.
Oh, that's all right. It is my birthday today, but I think this is great that I'm doing this. I'm busy today.
I'm with you. Good. And I mean, I did you kind of a disservice. I didn't read through the rap sheet of awards because quite honestly, there's so many of them. So for those of you who want to get to know Christine more, we'll have some different links in the show notes too, between your LinkedIn profile and your coaching platform. I mean, you literally have so many awards in the mortgage industry. And not just like women's awards, like just period. Like you're one of the most well-connected figures in the mortgage industry. So, so thank you for being on here. So with that being said, I want to jump right in. And, so you talked about launching your coaching business. You said like basically 2 years ago, you started to really have this thought and putting together your training tools. And now a year later, you're celebrating an anniversary. And I might take a little bit of a different twist with you than maybe you're expecting, but I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of people now want to be coaches. I almost joke around, there's almost more coaches now than there are salespeople, right? And so what have you learned over this past year of going all in on your own self?
Yeah. Well, I think the significant thing that I would say about that is that I do see the volume of people that are representing themselves as coaches. And, I try hard to stay out of the hater mentality. I feel like as a competitor most of my life, I got close to my competition. Anyone that would tell you that I beat them in a competition would also tell you I broke bread with them and I sat with them and I learned what they did because I figured if they were at the top, there was something they were doing right. And my philosophy is the same about coaching. What makes it the only adverse or maybe difficult thing that's challenging is that it becomes that much harder for a legitimate coach to be seen as such. And what I think is legitimate and what everybody else thinks is legitimate might be 2 different things. But one thing I learned the hard way is like, take the organizations I was managing. If I brought trainers in, say like, people that were polished, maybe even certified trainers or had some sort of background that said collegiately, they were equipped to train, but they had 0 time in the ditch, 0 soldier work, no boot camp, nothing. They show up, they look polished. They've got their 3-ring binder. They know how to put on an excellent workshop and they stand up. The very first thing that's happening in the room with real sales guys is the dismantling of that person based upon, are they coming from a point of experience and why am I sitting here being talked to by this person that has not done what I've done? So I saw some trainers get eaten up by my crews, over the years that I brought in. I needed extra hands on deck. I needed people to check boxes and do stuff. And they were great people, but they could not get respect. And when you don't have respect, and that's true for the coaching world. I see guys, and I love it, young guys that are like, they aspire to be a teacher. They want to be a coach. And now because of technology, and like right now, I'm sitting in a studio that's in my home. I have a backdrop. I have a Yeti. We're doing this podcast. Anybody can buy this stuff on Amazon and then say, hey, I'm a coach. I think the reason I knew I could tolerate throwing my hat into a ring where hats were just piled up to the ceiling was that I knew over time, and I knew that I came bearing experience, and I knew also what my competition brought to the table. I knew how I was different. And this is the same stuff I would teach all salespeople to do. You know, one of my very first classes in my virtual training center is called Niche Nitrous. I feel like one of the most fundamental things that you can do. And the first one, by the way, is Blueprint for Success, which is a business plan based on my 9 core philosophies that help me be successful, and on the book Wise Eyes. But niching is vital to your business. So if there's 2,000 people, 2 million people saying they're coaches, 98% of them are going to be coming slinging the same BS. And then 2% of them are going to be standouts for some reason. They're either going to be really like the gangster coaches that are coming like, they need proof. I'll I know this is one question, but I'll add this comment. I recently had somebody say to me, I worked with another known coach. I'm going to leave names out. And this guy currently originates, and he does really, really well. And he's really well known in the industry. And so, with you not being an originator today or having an origination team, what makes you think you're better than that other coach? It was like not an interview or anything. It was like a networking conversation face to face with an individual that really wanted to know the answer to that. And I said, well, do you know anything about my history? And he said, no. And I said, are you on social media? And he said, no. And I said, okay, well, in 30 days, you go on my social media on LinkedIn. And in 30 days, we'll come back and we'll have the same question and conversation, because I will share with you that I do have 30 years of origination experience. And to this day, right now, as I'm standing here, I have a team that's originating my database. I'm not originating, I think was your question. I said, but I get that people see that, and that's part of that person's mantra, is that they're saying, hey, I'm currently originating. I said, so I just think everybody needs to do their research, and they need to figure out who they're talking to and what the person comes bearing. There'll be a lot of elimination that way.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, it's funny you said respect. I'm surprised. Respect continues to be a word that I hear a lot in these interviews from people. Is, we've all heard Carnegie, know, like, trust, but there's actually a fourth component, and it is respect. Respect is such a big part of all this. I have so much respect for you, and not only what you've done, but what you're doing and the impact that you make. So, well, let's jump into then the second part, the twofold of this question then. Since you have coached thousands of people over the past, whether it's the past decade or 2 decades, what is consistently some of the things that you see? And I mean, this podcast is focused on younger, newer people, but I really think it's probably universal, right? Whether you're brand new or whether you have 5, 10, 15, 20 years experience, but what are some of the biggest missing structures that you see originators have, especially early on in their careers?
Yeah, I think everybody got into the business sideways. I always joke that we have somebody to blame for being here. And somebody that is succeeding, somehow gave us the idea to be in here. I found my way from a teller line to take an assistant job as an assistant to a female originator, which was very rare, in a small credit union. And I was watching what she did, and I assisted her. I mailed her verification of employment. I mean, I guess in today's world, you would call that a processor almost, but I did that for a couple of years, and I got the bug for it. I saw the type of commission structure she was getting, even in a small credit union in the late 80s. And, I was going to college for sports medicine, and I just decided, what, I want to get in here. But even then, there was no training for loan officers. And so, like my virtual training system, it's going to sound self-promotional. I wouldn't have even attempted to do what I'm doing if I didn't know there was a need, and I didn't know that there was something missing in the mortgage industry. And what's missing is that loan officers, by and large, anyone can go get past the NMLS test. There's courses out there that'll get you ready, and then you'll go, and if you're a good test taker or not, you'll eventually pass. And so then congratulations, you're an underwriter, right, from the NMLS testing. But you're not a business entrepreneur. And so I see 90% of loan officers struggle with being true operators of their business. Every single loan officer should think of themselves as the CEO of their own business. If they did that, the top 10% think that way. they go to work every day. They realize that ultimately their network is up to their efforts. They realize they have little time to waste. They put their time where, vetting needs to be. I have a class called Networking Rubik, and that class is very specific to who am I working with, and am I working with the right people, and do these people have business to give me? Because I see loan officers all the time wasting time. They go to networking events, they go to board of realtor events, for instance, and they end up leaving with 5 cards, and they talk to 3 people at the bar. And those 3 people are probably people that don't do business. They're, the ones that do business are probably sitting with their guy, their LO. They're occupied. They're not looking for a loan officer. They're the same ones that loan officers in the middle to low rungs will say, well, he's already got a guy, or she's already got a guy or girl, and so I'm not going to approach your business. I knew at 24 or 25, joining my local board of realtors, I needed to go for the guys that were the top producers. I understood that's where the business was. And I had mentors telling me, don't waste your time over here. And I made a career out of going for the gusto, like literally throwing my name in a hat. And let me tell you, I wasn't appreciated by the loan officers that were working with them, but they didn't have, the corner monopolized. And if they approached me about it, and believe me, my 24-year-old self had a lot of 45-year-old men that pretty much told me to bug off. And I said, last I knew, the NMLS licensure or the MLS licensure says that realtors have to offer 3 options. I'm going to be one of them. I'm pretty sure you don't dictate that. I'll let them speak for themselves. And I just kept on keeping on, and I went for the business. So, my coaching style is a little bit blunt, because when I get on the phone and I get wishy-washy people, I, right away I say, I can tell you right now why you're not selling well, because you sound so uncertain, and I don't think you even know. We got to start with, what is your value proposition? Why are you better? And you have to find an inner belief in yourself. And I feel like I've done a really good job of harnessing the focus levels of loan officers that need to first discover how to build the business. So I do 24 curated courses that they have to take behind the scenes if I'm not coaching them. And I don't coach everybody. Like, my system's built to scale people, like give them the MBA in sales acceleration. So they're going to learn marketing ROI. They're going to learn time management. And I'm a 2-time certified priority time management. I mean, I took 16 hours of time management certification, and I broke it down into a 12-minute cliff note. All the videos are under 15 minutes, which people will be surprised by because I'm super long-winded. So I made them short, powerful, animated videos. And when they finish them, they get a certificate of completion for each one, which allows them to be an expert in, pose themselves as an expert in their field. My goal is to turn out people that are going to change the course of their businesses for the rest of their lives. I feel like they're going to be with me for a finite number of months or time, and they're going to move on, because coaching's fickle. They're going to get what they want to get from me, and then they're going to move to the next guy. And so I'm not sitting here with pie in the sky ideas that people are going to come and stay with me forever. It's great, if they're here 2 or 3 years, but my belief, just like in that I'm not going to get every loan, is that the time I, spend wasting licking my wounds because someone passes on me or leaves me or whatever is wasted time. Like, I need to go and just do what I say, which is stay focused on picking up, more apples. I'm not ruthless about it. I mean, if people leave, they're still in my fold. And I make a point actually to connect with people that may move on, or people that say, you know what, this isn't the right time for me, or I'm going to go somewhere else. I make a point to connect with them over 30, 60, 90, and 120 days. My no's, my declines, my people that passed on me, the people that left me. There's a reason I do that. And I have an incredible relationship with people, and I build a lot of business out of that no pocket that everybody else just thinks the door is closed on. No for a lot of people means not now. And so, I'll just end by saying, I bet I have a 25% sales conversion out of the no pocket that everybody else just walks away from. And I want people to know they're more to me than a sale. They mean more to me than a sale.
I love it. And I know that that's why we're so aligned with everything that we're doing, because, you have your verbiage, I have my verbiage. But the reality is we're so interconnected with our philosophies behind coaching, whether it's getting no's, whether it's you kind of mentioned there's two areas then that I took from that for our younger, newer audience. Number one is you have to have something to say, right? A unique value proposition, whatever you want to call it. I kind of marry a unique belief proposition with a unique value proposition. So a unique belief proposition is, what do you believe and why do you believe it? Because of your unique past and struggles and experiences, to where I buy into your beliefs. And I know that we're in direct alignment on our beliefs about coaching and training, and especially because of our unique backgrounds and our
Yep.
unique struggles and experiences, right? And
No
then you
question.
get into, like you're talking about, the actual unique value, which is the niche, or the actual value that you bring to people, or that you could bring to people because of that. But I love the fact that as a 24-year-old, because I can only imagine, I coach a lot of people that are 22, 23, 24, just getting into mortgage, especially females. And I mean, it's just a whole different ball game for them, where they're trying to get in front of these referral partners. Exactly like you said, is there's only a certain percentage of realtors that are actually doing the business, and they typically have their one or two people. And I
Yeah.
just had my good buddy Joey Abdullah on, and he says, anytime I hear people talking plurals, I know I have a chance, because it
Yeah.
means they don't have their one go-to person, even though you need to have your three, right? Or 3 to 5 or whatever it is. Let's be honest, most have their one that
Right.
they're basically giving that business to. So that's kind of where he's trained himself to hear, am I hearing plurals when they say I have mortgage people, right? Versus my mortgage person. So these are tangible things now our listeners can go out there and do in that process. So let me just dig a little bit deeper into, Christine, you had mentioned, how do you handle those conversations then? As a 24 or 25-year-old getting into the business, and the big realtors are like, I already have my people or my person. How do you coach people to overcome that? Because you're not afraid to go for no, and then, like you said, even go past the no's and
Yeah.
get 3 or 4 or 5 additional no's, which is the confidence part of it, which is really difficult to train for early on, or it can be
Yeah.
difficult to train for.
I'm going to tell you that when I was writing, so I wrote Wise Eyes in the summer of 2006, and then it sat on a shelf. I actually I had my PR guy at the time who was doing video find me an editor. I sent the book that I had written so far. And then back then you sent a printed manuscript, typed manuscript, and like they marked it up like a teacher. Getting to a point on this, to your question, I got it back. And I was really discouraged because it was all marked up and there was like question marks. And I was like, oh my God, and you already feel vulnerable putting like your writing out there. And so that's set aside. And about 3 years ago, I picked it back up out of the encouragement in a phone conversation to somebody. And I sent it to a new editor. And that editor, I literally sent the same marked up manuscript. I had a conversation with the woman and I said, I don't know if I'm a good writer because this woman tore it apart. And she said, well, send me what you got. So I sent it to her and she's like, did you ever make it to the back page? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, the previous editor wrote this lovely letter to you about your writing. And I said, she did? On the back page? No idea. I got so discouraged. I hadn't flipped all the way to the back. I didn't. And I said, no. And she took a screenshot of it and sent it to me. And it was this long letter about how naturally beautiful my writing was. So I was looking at like the editing and the imperfections of my voice and like all these things. I say this to you because as I worked with the new editor and I finished the book, I was asked to write what it felt like, the same exact question you just asked me, what it felt like in my 20s to be in a male-dominated field, to overcome, to not be welcomed maybe, and so on and so forth. And I said, you know what? I don't want to write that kind of book. I'm still working with a bunch of men, 98% men. I don't want to alienate them. And then she said, listen to me. She's like, you're working with men right now. And I had been for 30 years. And she said, but, when your son's grandson picks up his great-great-grandmother's book and wants to read about who she was, what's her truth? And I said, oh, snap. That's like a whole different perspective. She goes, your books are going to live on for hundreds of years past you. She said, and when they read them, they're either going to read a watered down story or they're going to read the truth. What's your truth? She's like, sit down this weekend and write your truth. So here's the truth. Now I'm liberated and it's public and it's out there. It's chapter 14 in the center of Wise Eyes. And it can never come out. But I'm going to tell you what I learned is that writing that, I bawled my eyes out on a Sunday morning. It was a winter morning. I got coffee. I sat by my fireplace in my den and I started writing in the journal like she told me to do about how I had felt. And what I realized about myself in the process of doing this is that I had been afraid during those years and that I was living in fear of not being accepted. And I did feel hurt by the people that didn't want me to do well and welcome me. But somehow something inside me, this fierceness I've always had, that feeling like right about, when you're in sports and you're about to take the field and you want to lay your best down and there's fears you have. And somehow you push through, like you physically push forward. And what you don't realize is that fear is still there, pushed down, and action is kind of taking over. When I sat and wrote that, 30 years of that fear I've had the whole time, and probably leading up to the moment I wrote that, came barreling out of me because I was saying words. I was allowing myself to say words I had never spoken. So, I'll say this to you that, I've had, when I look back now at my 20s, I really believe that if I just focused on everything that was happening around me, I would not be here today, because no one wanted me to succeed. When I threw my hat in as a loan officer, I was leaving 2 loan officers that I was processing for. Neither one of them wanted me to leave. I was awesome processor for those 2 guys. I was joining the ranks of 21 loan officers. One was female. She was an older woman. She hated me, was so mean to me. She mocked my clothing. She would talk over me in meetings. You could tell and this is what I think older women back then really had to work hard to get to that table. And so it was a weird dichotomy, but they didn't really want to see other women coming in. It's just a weird thing. And so, and then when I went out on the road, the realtors were like, they turned me away. I looked like Barbie Banker with my new Coach briefcase at 24, 25, and the realtors were all female, and, they didn't, I don't know what they thought, but every inch of the way, it was like, I should have just gotten in my car and gone home. And, I'm a living testament now. And so every year that went by, I got more and more fierce. But here's what I knew. I knew then and I know now. I get asked to speak for women, and I always say I'm not a good women libist. I'm really not a woman. I'm not a liberal in this way. I'm kind of old fashioned. I like having the door opened for me. I never did anything in my career because I was trying to prove something on a gender basis. And so I will say that I won because I wasn't willing to play from the women's tee. I was willing to step up to the men's tee. And if my shot was short, I owned it. And if the guys laughed at my shot, I would always secretly think, I'm going to kick this person's ass, like in my head. And I did, it took time. Like sometimes I would be in a contest 12 months and I would be starting from behind. My work ethic alone would put me towards the front of the pack. But then beyond that, my strategy, when people fell back, I pushed forward during there's 2 seasonal declines in the mortgage industry. So if you're listening right now, listen up. Summertime and wintertime. And you know what? I get it. We're tired when those months come. It's summer, the sun's out, let's go play. Winter comes and we're beat from the whole year. I get it. And I'm not a proponent of not having good work-life balance. But if you just keep your foot on the throttle that much more than the competition that falls back, there are by percentages strategies where I would accelerate, where they could not then catch back up to me because of those 4 months, 2 in the summer, 2 in the winter, that I stayed consistently working hard. I still stopped at 5 or 6 o'clock and had my evenings and did my weekends. I still took time off on the holidays. The difference was a mentality, because during those months, a lot is lost during the work day. People start cutting out. They take longer lunches. They just take all days off. They work less. So what was happening is they were working per se, but during the 40 hours, their output, let's say, was 60% to my 100. So when I started to win those contests and whatnot, I will just end by saying that I earned the respect. So I guess my first chapter in Wise Eye says, avoid the noise. And that is my life mantra. Just drown out. There are always going to be people that tell you you can't do it, and just drown it out, because success is for the victor. It's for those who stay down. Your competition does not want to see you win. And, why we would go foolishly into anything thinking red carpets are going to be laid out for us, I don't know. But anyways.
No, I love it. So, I mean, you gave a bunch of tangible takeaways. It's one early on, you have to be a little bit naive, probably. Otherwise, if we knew how hard it was going to be, maybe we wouldn't have gotten started. I think about that of moving from Nashville to Denver to launch my business. I don't want to go back to 3 years ago. I'm so thankful of these past 3 years of just struggle. And I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about is your unique past and struggles and experiences. Don't suppress the past, celebrate it. That's what makes us who we are today. And I think that's where people who have been battle tested, they consistently have a story like that they own it, and now they share it with other people. And that's why I started this Solopreneur Movement podcast, is for people that are going through that. And we've all been there. We have been there. You're going to go through it, right? One of my favorite quotes is the 10-year overnight success story. And people don't see all these behind the scenes things that go on, or the external things that we can't control anyways, right? So I appreciate you obviously just sharing those stories, because now the listeners can take something from that, because we all have those things. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when those bad, negative things, or however we want to look at it, are going to happen, that we're going to have to become battle tested and then go do something from it. The other thing that I really enjoyed that I haven't heard before is the 4-month concept, right? 2 months in the summer, 2 months in the winter. Well, that's a full quarter now if we add that up, to where if we're doing, I guess my math is wrong, it's more than a quarter, but that's a whole third of the year. Yeah. That if we go do, even if the compound effect, right, is if I just stay consistent in those months, I can now go differentiate myself, or even if maybe I'm not as quote unquote good as somebody else, well, I can pass them. It's like the whole tortoise and the hare concept, right?
So I think that a lot of people, I think a lot of it's mentality. We do have a true seasonal decline because obviously, there are less homes for sale because people don't list through the holidays. So there's some real facts about seasonal decline. And I'm not trying to say it isn't a real thing. What I'm telling you is that our fallback mentality, that we just accept that there's a seasonal decline, leaves a lot on the table. And so I've had winters where I fell back as well, that I wasn't necessarily like driving to be at the top 1 or 2% or whatever. But I always was in the top, 10% of my companies. And just always, I guess, competing and a competitor. And, now that my last book is out, which now opens even bigger doors of windows into the eyesight of my life, which was very difficult for me to decide to do. Wise Eyes exposed some of, a few personal stories, but mainly stayed within a principle-based book based on business, and, with a few personal stories shared. Breaking the Cycle is a tell-all book about my childhood. And I didn't even think to write the book. I had a fellow child that lived with me in my neighborhood that had become a nationally renowned doctor. And she felt like our story was worth telling because we both lecture, and she lectures more than me. She's literally on the speaking circuit like 45 weeks of the year and in multiple cities a week. She wrote one of the doctorates for the American Nurse Practitioners and became famous for it. And, we had a story to tell, I think, that was untold. And now that people know it, I have people that I've worked with for 20 years that have called me this last week, and they're like, you're like a different person to me now that I have read this, because I thought I knew you and I thought I knew why you are like you are. And so this is what I say. All of us have different stories. All of us have different whys. All of us have different motivation. There is so much success, and I would say success, it needs to be defined by, what you decide success is. I used to think it was money only because I lived for so long without much of it. And then when I got material things, my parents fell terminally ill. Thank God they overcame, cancer and a brain aneurysm. I have an older sister fighting lung disease, and who's very young, and the outlook has not looked good for a long time. And these things put perspective in place, and you realize, like, I'm going to leave with like the same thing I came in with. And I can either have like excess in my mind, material things, and I like nice things. I have nice things, but my life is not excessive, and my abundance does not come from money. I promise you. The perfect day for me is waking up and lighting a fire in my fireplace and having my family at home on a weekend and cooking them breakfast and watching a movie, maybe writing. I love to write. So I might be writing for one of the magazines, but to sit down and like pen something for me is great. But it's just different. It's not, it's not what you think.
Well, I love the fact that you always have something you look forward to. Like you're always striving. You always have a new project that's coming up, whether it's like a book. I mean, when I met you, I think you had 1 or 2 books out, and you've written that many since then. I'm like, what is going on with this person over here? Like, how does she keep doing all this kind of stuff? And I just now I'm like, I need to get this one book done. So I just love the fact that you execute, which is, as we all know, 99% of all this stuff is just the execution piece of it. Even when you've been told no, or you've been whatever it might be, it's like you still got to keep going and pushing through. And so I am a big believer. The reason I do this podcast is selfishly, I can borrow confidence and energy from other people. So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing these different tools that I know our listeners can go out there and execute on. So if somebody wants to learn more about you, like I said, I'll have some different things down below, but where can they find you, or where's the best place to reach out?
So going to our website is always the best place. It's pretty robust. There's lots and lots of pages in the menu. So search around, look at the videos. And that is www.visionyoursuccess.net. We're on all of the social medias. I would say our biggest presence is on LinkedIn under my name, Christine Beckwith. We're relatively new to Instagram. We have a Facebook page that you should check out, that we have lots of stuff on there daily. I think we have a YouTube channel that's on there as well under my name. And you'll learn so much just going on the website, about what we do and what we're after. And that's it. We're focused on giving back and paying it forward. And, our mantra is emotional awakening through education is our tagline.
I like it.
And, we truly believe that for me, I guess I would just leave everybody with the thoughts that, education for me was something that didn't come easy. I had to fight to get to college, to get scholarship money. And I knew at 13 or 14, I literally knew I had no money to go with. And so, I think until you're young and you are put with these like really mature responsibilities, like you've got to work, and I had counselors working with me, but I had to do part-time jobs and all 3 sports and extracurriculum. And I was told to do these things because if I did it, I would have a shot at getting scholarships. So I had to work for 4 years towards a goal I didn't know for sure I would get. And so I got 13 scholarships, which helped me go to school. I worked during college. And so it's not a surprise, I don't think, to anyone that I've been giving back secondary educational scholarships now for over 20 years. We have an endowment through our books. We give back through 2 of our books in an educational way. And so, you got to find what mark you want to leave. That's my legacy work. And that's what we stand for. And we hope we hope it connects and makes an impact.
Well, and it is, so it's like I said, it's been fun to watch, over the last 2 years of knowing you. It's fun to watch all this come to life now, and it's only going to continue to grow. And I know we're only going to continue to grow together. So thank you so much, as always, for spending the time with our solopreneur audience. So be sure to connect with Christine and learn more about her coaching and all the wonderful things that she's doing, speaking all over the country, really all over the world now at this point. So I'm proud of you, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.